What if the sky is trying to tell us something we've forgotten how to hear? The newest observations reveal that Comet R2 SWAN has extended a rare sunward stream, bending its luminous tail toward the sun in a pattern that mirrors the impossible behavior once recorded in 3I Atlas. Two different bodies, from two different origins, now displaying the same forbidden geometry as they drift through Earth's surrounding corridor. This is not merely a cosmic coincidence. It is a pattern, a signal, a quiet echo in space that forces us to question how much of our world's history remains hidden behind the veil of deep time. When two celestial objects behave as one, synchronizing movements across millions of kilometers, the universe demands our attention. Imagine watching Earth from the perspective of these comets, seeing continents shift, oceans rise and fall, and civilizations appear and vanish like sparks in a dark room. R2 SWAN and 3I Atlas move with a strange elegance, as if aligning themselves to a rhythm older than human memory. Astronomers describe these anomalies as unexpected. Observers call them fascinating. But those who look deeper recognize that moments like this challenge the boundaries of what we believe we know. Sunward streams defy standard physics. Repeated patterns across independent celestial bodies hint at structures or forces we have not yet mapped. And the timing, this precise passage through Earth's corridor, adds a layer of mystery too sharp to ignore. For some, these events are just numbers in a database. For others, they are reminders that our planet exists inside a dynamic cosmic system that may hold secrets larger than all recorded history. When two comets echo the same impossible behavior, we must ask whether similar alignments were witnessed long before humans, perhaps even by civilizations erased by time, their knowledge dissolved into rock and ocean. This is where curiosity becomes essential, where discovery begins and where belonging emerges, not from certainty, but from seeking. If you are here, it's because a part of you feels that something about this universe still awaits understanding, something that connects cosmic motion to the forgotten chapters of Earth. Before we continue this investigation, share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think these synchronized comet patterns reveal about our world? And if you want to stay connected to the deepest mysteries of our planet and the cosmos, subscribe now and join this community of seekers as we explore what might still be written in the sky. To understand how the possibility of prehistoric civilizations before the dinosaurs can fit inside the framework of scientific logic, we must first confront the brutal reality of deep time. Deep time is not a silent backdrop to Earth's history. It is an active force, a sculptor, a destroyer, and a relentless eraser. Everything we think of as permanent, mountains, oceans, continents, even the planet's atmosphere, exists only as temporary configurations inside a geological engine that never stops moving. When you look at a mountain, you see stability. When deep time looks at the same mountain, it sees a moment, a brief pause between emergence and disappearance. And if even mountains are fleeting, what chance would a civilization have at leaving behind any trace after hundreds of millions of years? Consider that the Himalayan range, one of the most dramatic structures on Earth, is only about 50 million years old. Dinosaurs walked the Earth for 165 million years, and even they left only fragments. But what about civilizations that might have risen before them, in eras when the continents themselves were arranged differently, when shallow seas covered vast regions, and when the crust of the planet was thinner, warmer, and more unstable? Their worlds would have been repeatedly folded into subduction zones, melted in the mantle, fractured by tectonic rifts, buried in sediments, or drowned under rising oceans. Their cities would not weather, they would vanish. Their tools would not rust, they would be crushed into mineral powder. Their monuments would not crumble, they would sink and be swallowed. Deep time does not preserve civilizations, it consumes them. This is the first truth we must accept when exploring the idea of prehistoric civilizations before the dinosaurs. Earth is not a museum, it is a recycler. Every layer of stone is a page rewritten, often violently, relentlessly, with no regard for what was written before. Science teaches us that the oldest ocean floors on Earth are younger than 200 million years. Everything older has been dragged beneath continents, melted and resurfaced as new rock. which means that if a civilization existed a billion years ago, before the Cambrian explosion, before hard shells and bones appeared, it would have lived on landscapes that no longer exist. Not metaphorically, literally. They are gone, pulverized, liquefied, transformed. Even if they built with stone, metal, or materials unknown to us, deep time would have made them disappear completely. The only survivors would be indirect signatures, chemical anomalies, unexplained thermal scars, sudden environmental shifts, clues embedded in layers of Earth that do not belong to any known process. Consider impact craters. They are among the most resilient markers in planetary geology, and yet Earth has lost most of them. Meteor strikes the size of cities, even countries, have been erased by erosion, vegetation, oceans, volcanic resurfacing, or plate tectonics. The oldest confirmed crater in Greenland is barely recognizable as a crater at all. It is a faint gravitational anomaly hidden under ice and metamorphic rock, detected only through advanced scanning. If something as violent and large as an asteroid impact can almost vanish, how easily would a civilization's works be erased? Imagine buildings crushed into magma, roads stretched and distorted into metamorphic veins, tools dissolved into chemical ghosts, indistinguishable from natural mineralization. Even radioactivity, one of the longest-lived signatures of modern technology, would be reabsorbed into geological cycles over hundreds of millions of years. Deep time is patient. Deep time always wins. But the most powerful demonstration of deep time's erasure is the fossil record. Less than 1% of all species that ever lived are known to us. Entire ecosystems disappeared without leaving a single identifiable fossil. Soft-bodied creatures which dominated early Earth left almost nothing behind. And when fossils do form, they represent conditions so rare and specific that they are practically accidents. Which means gaps are not surprising. Continuity is the true mystery. Geological layers reveal periods of rapid transformation, sudden disappearances, abrupt transitions. We call them extinctions, but some may have been something far more complex. Some may reflect processes that acted so quickly and so broadly that traditional biology struggles to explain them. And within these gaps, some researchers see opportunities to consider ancient civilizations, not necessarily human-like, not necessarily technological, but intelligent in ways we cannot yet conceive, whose traces were woven into environmental patterns rather than object-based artifacts. To illustrate how complete erasure can be, imagine burying a modern city like Tokyo under 50 kilometers of sediment, heating it to 600 degrees Celsius, compressing it to the density of metamorphic rock, and then grinding the entire block beneath another continent for 500 million years. Would anything recognizable survive? Nothing. Not concrete, not steel, not glass, not microchips. Even satellites orbiting Earth would fall, burn, or decay within tens of thousands of years. In geological terms, that is silence, and silence is deep time's default state. Yet within that silence lie anomalies, irregularities in mineral composition, sudden changes in chemical cycles, structures in ancient rock that behave too intentionally for chance. These anomalies act like faint echoes traveling across billions of years. And when we combine them with the strange harmonies unfolding in the sky, like R2-SWAN and 3I Atlas mirroring each other's forbidden sunward streams, we begin to sense patterns that stretch beyond the boundaries of documented history. Patterns suggesting that Earth's past might be more layered, more cyclical, and more mysterious than we have ever allowed ourselves to imagine, leading us deeper into the next phase of this investigation, where we must examine the geological anomalies that persist despite deep time's attempts to erase every trace, and where the first cracks in the silence begin to reveal. If deep time destroys evidence, then geological anomalies become the only cracks through which forgotten stories can still escape. They are the scars, the distortions, the strange fingerprints left behind on landscapes that should be uniform, predictable, and easily explained. But the Earth is full of places where the expected patterns break apart. Mineral veins that appear heated from within without a volcanic source. Rock layers fused in ways inconsistent with pressure alone. Seams of crystalline structures that show signs of instantaneous formation rather than long-term cooling. These are the geological riddles that force scientists to pause. They appear in the oldest parts of the crust, in cratons that survived supercontinent cycles, and in metamorphic layers so ancient they predate complex life. And in these places, the planet whispers something unusual, something inconsistent with the slow, steady processes we assume are responsible for shaping the world. Some anomalies reveal heat signatures far beyond what any natural process should have produced at the time. These thermal scars are found in rocks older than 600 million years, where isotopic studies show rapid, localized heating with no corresponding volcanic activity. It is as though massive energy pulses suddenly struck small regions of the crust, heating them intensely and then cooling them just as fast. Under natural conditions, heat disperses gradually, leaving diffusion patterns that can be traced through mineral gradients. But in these anomalies, the heat cuts sharply, as if applied by something with defined boundaries, something capable of focusing energy. Scientists sometimes classify these as metamorphic mysteries, but classification does not explain them. Interpretation does. And one interpretation is that these anomalies might reflect interactions with forces or technologies or biological processes unknown to our modern framework. Not machinery in the human sense, but something capable of manipulating heat, pressure, or mineral reactions in ways we cannot replicate today. Other anomalies appear in the form of stratified patterns that suggest intentional organization. Some layers of ancient rock show alternating bands of minerals arranged with mathematical precision, as though layered by design. In nature, layering often arises from sediments settling in water or from repetitive volcanic events. But in these ancient formations, the interlocking geometry defies such explanations. The spacing is too even, the transitions are too abrupt, and the mineral distribution resembles patterns found in engineered materials rather than random deposits. Even more intriguing are the crystalline structures that appear out of place in these ancient layers. Some crystals show orientation patterns that imply exposure to directed electromagnetic fields. Yet no known natural phenomena in those eras could generate such fields consistently across large regions. One of the most striking examples occurs in the Pilbara region of Australia, where 3.5-billion-year-old rocks contain vein systems with anomalous magnetization. Modern researchers attribute these to early planetary magnetic storms, but some of the magnetization patterns are too localized and too structured to align with known geomagnetic processes. They appear instead like remnants of interactions with concentrated electromagnetic phenomena. The idea that life forms or intelligent networks, non-human, ancient, perhaps microbial or distributed, could manipulate magnetic fields seems outlandish until we recall that organisms today already use magnetism. Birds navigate using geomagnetic lines. Bacteria grow internal magnetic crystals to orient themselves. Magnetotactic behavior is not unusual, only its scale is. In a world we do not fully understand, a world before the dinosaurs, before vertebrates, before hard shells, it is possible that entire ecosystems operated through magnetic and chemical communication systems capable of leaving geological signatures still visible today. Another category of anomalies involves sudden mineralization events. In regions of South Africa and Canada, ancient rock formations contain veins of rare metals clustered with unnatural density. Under typical geological processes, these metals form gradually through hydrothermal activity. But in these specific anomalies, the concentration is so high and the deposition so rapid that natural hydrothermal models struggle to explain them. Some of these veins contain platinum group elements arranged in patterns resembling extraction or accumulation rather than random distribution. If a prehistoric civilization, biological, chemical, or otherwise, interacted with minerals for energy, metabolic processes, or environmental regulation, their influence on these regions could produce exactly the kind of clustered anomalies we observe today. Even more intriguing are instances of metamorphic rock fused in ways that resemble extreme pressure events without tectonic justification. These rocks show signs of compression so intense they resemble the signatures of impact structures. Yet they appear in areas without any trace of an impact crater, as though immense pressure was applied from within rather than from above. Could these reflect natural mantle plumes? Possibly. Could they reflect catastrophic biological or environmental processes unknown to modern Earth? Also possible. Could they represent something more deliberate? The idea is speculative, but speculation arises from patterns, and patterns refuse to disappear. Across the world, in the oldest rocks, we also find sheet structures, large, flat bodies of intrusive rock that formed with unusual sharpness, suggesting rapid injection rather than gradual emplacement. They cut through older layers like blades, as though something pierced the crust with precision. Classical geology attributes these to magmatic processes, but the degree of uniformity, the sharp contact zones, and the lack of thermal halos in some cases create contradictions. If energy, heat, or pressure was delivered in a focused and instantaneous way, these contradictions would dissolve. The question is, what could do that? Nature, catastrophe, or something else entirely? The most enigmatic anomalies are those that imply repetition across distant locations. Similar mineral scar patterns appear in regions separated by continents. Identical thermal anomalies show up in layers formed millions of years apart. Symmetrical geometric fractures appear on opposite sides of ancient supercontinents. Patterns should not repeat unless governed by a mechanism. And if the mechanism is not purely geological, then what remains? The possibility that something long forgotten, something erased by deep time, once influenced the planet in ways faintly visible through these scars. These anomalies are not evidence by themselves. They are questions. They are hints. They are shadows cast by actions, events, or processes that we no longer have the tools to fully decode. Each one opens a door, and when we walk through that door, we enter a world where Earth's oldest layers begin to behave like a palimpsest, an ancient manuscript scraped clean and rewritten, yet still holding fragments of earlier stories beneath the surface. Stories that lead us toward the next point in this unfolding investigation, where we move from geological scars to biological surprises, exploring evolutionary leaps and organisms that appear suddenly with complexity too advanced for their era, organisms that raise the possibility that intelligence may have taken forms we can barely imagine during the ages that science calls, if the geological layers of Earth contain scars that resist natural explanations, the biological record contains anomalies even more unsettling. Evolution is often portrayed as a smooth progression from simple to complex, from primitive organisms to advanced life. But the more deeply we study the fossil record, the more we find interruptions, leaps, and unpredictable detonations of complexity. These leaps stretch beyond what we can comfortably attribute to gradual mutation. In certain eras, long before dinosaurs, new life forms appear suddenly, bearing features that seem light years ahead of anything surrounding them. Features that imply intelligence, coordination, or sensory sophistication emerging far earlier than current evolutionary models predict. These anomalies force us to reconsider whether evolution always operated in a purely natural, unguided way, or whether some ancient influence, biological, environmental, or even intentional, introduced complexity that should not have been possible in the eras where it appears. The Cambrian explosion is the most famous example of sudden complexity, but anomalies begin even earlier. In the Ediacaran period, we encounter organisms so strange that paleontologists struggle to classify them. They do not fit the patterns of animals, plants, or fungi. Some appear to have quilt-like bodies with fractal structures repeated across multiple scales, suggesting developmental processes unlike any modern life. Their symmetry is unfamiliar, their growth patterns unpredictable, their ecological roles uncertain. Some researchers suggest they were entire ecosystems condensed into single organisms, functioning as distributed networks rather than individual creatures. Others believe they may represent an evolutionary experiment, an era where life explored possibilities far more diverse than what survived. But a few scientists propose that some Ediacaran forms might reflect intelligence at a scale we are not used to perceiving. Not intelligence in a brain-centric form, but intelligence embedded in cellular communication, in metabolic regulation, in the ability to adapt entire body plans to environmental change with a fluidity unknown to later life. Then, as if someone flipped a switch, the Ediacaran forms mostly vanish. Their disappearance is abrupt and unexplained. Yet within a few million years, almost nothing in geological terms, complex creatures appear with eyes, nervous systems, articulated limbs, and highly specialized functions. Trilobites emerge with compound eyes that rival some modern insects. But this creates a paradox. How could eyes with such precision appear so suddenly, with no clear evolutionary precursors? Their visual organs show optical engineering so refined, lenses made of calcite, arranged in compound arrays, that even modern biomimetics researchers use trilobite eyes as references for advanced design. How did such sophistication arise as if out of nowhere? And more importantly, what drove its development? Random mutation alone struggles to explain the speed of these jumps. But if organisms in earlier eras already possessed distributed or networked intelligence, even if not in the form of brains, their influence could appear indirectly in the evolutionary trajectory of those that followed. Intelligence need not survive as a species to leave behind its imprint. It can alter ecosystems, create pressures, or introduce innovations that ripple through future life in ways we do not yet know how to trace. Cephalopods offer another biological clue. Modern octopuses possess intelligence that seems out of place in their evolutionary lineage. Their brains are not centralized like mammals. Instead, their cognition is distributed, with neural networks running through their arms. Some scientists suggest octopuses might represent a lineage with ancient cognitive roots, possibly inherited from pre-dinosaur eras through evolutionary channels we fail to recognize because the fossil record is too incomplete. Their DNA contains sequences that appear to have no clear ancestral origin, puzzling researchers. If we consider the possibility that intelligence evolved more than once on Earth, long before vertebrates took over, then cephalopods may be descendants of a lineage that once flourished in a world erased by deep time. Another compelling anomaly is found in the fossilized burrow systems of early marine creatures. In multiple regions, China, Namibia, Canada, biologists have discovered traces of complex behaviors encoded in the movement patterns of early life. Some burrows appear organized, repeating geometric pathways that suggest planning rather than instinct. The spatial logic embedded in these burrows resembles the optimized structures created by modern social insects, except these patterns predate social insects by hundreds of millions of years. Could these reflect the actions of creatures capable of environmental mapping, resource management, or collective behavior? If ancient organisms possessed sensory abilities or distributed intelligence, their behaviors could leave behind these fossilized patterns even if their bodies did not survive. Chemical anomalies also offer clues. Sudden spikes in oxygen or carbon ratios appear in layers where no corresponding natural mechanism should exist. Traditional explanations often turn to volcanic eruptions or meteor impacts, but these do not always align with the timing or locality of the changes. Instead, some of these chemical shifts resemble the signatures produced by biological engineering, meaning organisms altering their environments intentionally or as a byproduct of complex metabolic strategies. Modern ecosystems do this today. Beavers reshape rivers. Coral reefs engineer ocean chemistry. Humans alter the atmosphere. Intelligence influences environments. If prehistoric civilizations existed, not as humans but as networks, colonies, or ecosystem-level entities, their influence on ancient chemistry would be subtle but detectable. There are even fossilized marks that resemble coordinated migrations. In some Precambrian layers, parallel trackways stretch for kilometers, moving in synchronized directions, as though entire populations traveled with shared intention. Without advanced nervous systems, how could they coordinate so precisely? Modern scientists propose tidal cues or chemical signaling, but the level of synchronization suggests something more cohesive. Perhaps life in those eras communicated on wavelengths unfamiliar to us, electromagnetic, geothermal, or chemical gradients woven through entire ecosystems. These forms of communication would not fossilize as organs or bones, but as behaviors echoed in sediment. The most provocative biological anomalies are those that show sudden complexity without transitional forms. Mysterious organisms appear with structural innovations that look like solutions to problems that should not yet have existed. Some show sensory organs that imply the ability to detect light or pressure far earlier than expected. Others show muscular arrangements suggesting coordinated movement. These organisms appear, flourish briefly, then vanish, leaving only an evolutionary question mark. Why develop complexity if nothing else around you requires it? unless complexity was inherited, borrowed, or accelerated by forces operating beneath the surface of evolutionary change. What emerges from all these biological anomalies is a picture not of random evolution, but of a world repeatedly experimenting with intelligence. Intelligence that may not look like ours, may not build tools like ours, may not leave artifacts like ours, but intelligence nevertheless. Intelligence embedded in life itself, shaping ecosystems, influencing environments, and leaving behind faint signals detectable only through the distortions they imprint on behavior, chemistry, and morphology. And as we explore these signals, we begin to imagine forms of ancient intelligence that were not anthropocentric, not technological in the human sense, but deeply integrated into their world, leading us into the next chapter where we must ask what intelligence looks like when it does not resemble brains, bodies, or machines, but takes shape through. When we imagine intelligence, we imagine ourselves. We picture hands shaping tools, eyes observing patterns, and brains storing memories. But this self-portrait limits our imagination. If intelligence emerged on Earth long before the dinosaurs, it may not have worn a human shape. It may not have needed bones, nerves, or centralized brains. It may have instead existed as networks, ecosystems, or chemical collectives capable of coordinated action. To understand prehistoric civilizations before the dinosaurs, we must release the idea that civilization requires buildings, metal, or speech. Intelligence may be a property of complexity, not anatomy. And complexity has taken forms in Earth's history that are far stranger than anything alive today. Consider slime molds. They solve mazes, optimize transportation networks, store memory chemically, and make decisions without a single neuron. Scale this behavior upward across millions of years, across entire regions, across global ecosystems, and the boundary between organism and civilization becomes blurred. Intelligence does not need hands, it needs patterns, and patterns existed long before bones. Imagine an ancient world dominated by a distributed intelligence inhabiting oceanic mats, coral-like structures, or microbial supercolonies. These entities might have communicated through chemical gradients, electromagnetic pulses, or fluid dynamics. Their bodies might have spanned kilometers. Their minds might have been ecosystems. Their civilizations might have been emergent, arising not from cities but from synchronized behavior across environments. And because they would not build in the human sense, their traces would be environmental, not architectural. Subtle modifications of mineral distributions, shifts in ocean chemistry, patterns of sediment deposition that mimic intentional regulation. These traces would resemble natural processes so closely that we would misinterpret them today, unable to distinguish the work of an intelligence integrated directly into the fabric of the biosphere. Look at fungal networks. Modern mycelium can share resources, reroute nutrients, communicate warnings, and restructure forests. Some networks stretch for miles and live for thousands of years. They exhibit electrical impulses similar to neural firing patterns. Now imagine if such networks existed 700 million years ago, before land plants, before animals with shells, before anything with a form we would recognize. They might have merged with microbial mats, forming hybrid systems capable of large-scale environmental engineering. They might have built biochemical reservoirs, reshaped soil chemistry, or regulated early atmospheric cycles. Their technology would not be metal, but metabolism. Their infrastructure would be living matter, their knowledge stored in chemical memory rather than symbolic language. Consider also the possibility of ocean-based intelligence. Octopuses already demonstrate cognitive abilities that defy their evolutionary lineage: problem-solving, memory, deception, play. They possess distributed brains, with each arm acting semi-independently. Their ancestors stretch far back into deep time. What if similar oceanic lineages developed far earlier, long before dinosaurs, long before vertebrates? They might have evolved communication through chromatophores, electromagnetic fields, or pressure waves. Their societies might have been fluid, forming and dissolving in currents. Their artifacts would have been organic, dissolving the moment they died. Their structures would be invisible to the fossil record. And yet their behaviors might have left chemical trails, reorganized ecosystems, or produced symmetrical patterns in seabed sediment that persist as faint geological anomalies today. But intelligence might have gone even further from our expectations. Some researchers speculate that early life may have experimented with forms that blur the boundary between organism and environment. A civilization might have existed as a planetary-scale superorganism, a coordinated network regulating climate, nutrients, and ocean chemistry. Instead of building, it would have tuned. Instead of expanding outward, it would have deepened inward. Its achievements would not be skyscrapers, but stable global equilibria in eras when climate should have been wildly unstable. If such a system rose to complexity, its collapse might appear in the geological record as abrupt environmental shifts. Its presence would appear as unexplained stability, and its disappearance would show up as sudden destabilization without any predictable natural trigger. This perspective forces us to re-examine what intelligence means. Intelligence is not exclusive to brains. Trees communicate, corals calculate, microbes coordinate. Earth itself behaves like a living system, maintaining temperature, chemistry, and atmospheric balance across billions of years. If intelligence can arise from networks, patterns, feedback loops, or self-organizing systems, then Earth may have hosted intelligent civilizations not once but many times, each emerging from different ecological niches. Some may have been brief and explosive, others may have been stable and slow. All could have vanished without leaving artifacts recognizable to us. Their existence is not disproven by lack of ruins. It is hinted at by coherence appearing too early and too suddenly in the fossil and chemical record. Even consciousness could have taken unfamiliar forms. Distributed cognition might have allowed entire ecosystems to process information. Chemical signaling might have transmitted memory across generations. Evolutionary pressures might have rewarded coordination rather than individuality. In such a world, the distinction between species and civilization blurs. A civilization might not be a group of individuals, but a configuration of life. A wave of intelligence passing through ecosystems like a migrating chemical pattern. And if that intelligence vanished, its legacy would survive only in faint distortions. Mineral veins arranged with impossible symmetry, sediment layers deposited too quickly, ecosystem shifts too coordinated to be random. These anomalies become the whispers of civilizations that were not shaped like us, did not think like us, and did not build like us. Civilizations whose intelligence was woven into the atmosphere, the oceans, or the crust itself. And if such systems existed, then their disappearance would leave behind a void that later life would evolve to fill. A vacuum that explains the sudden rise of complexity in the Cambrian, the abrupt appearance of advanced sensory organs, the rapid specialization of early animals. Perhaps evolution did not begin intelligently, but inherited echoes of intelligence, leading us directly into the next question. What happens when such integrated civilizations collapse, and what geological or biological footprints might those collapses leave behind when we examine the cataclysms that reset Earth again and again, and if ancient, non-anthropocentric civilizations once shaped the earliest landscapes of Earth, then their greatest legacy would not be tools or structures, but the environmental transformations they left behind. And here is where the geological and biological records converge in a way that becomes almost impossible to ignore. Environmental engineering, in the prehistoric context, would not resemble human construction. It would resemble alterations in global chemistry, atmospheric restructuring, nutrient redistribution, or targeted stabilization of ecosystems. And astonishingly, the oldest layers of the planet contain multiple episodes in which Earth's environment changes too quickly, too precisely, or too repeatedly to match the expectations of natural processes alone. These are not gentle fluctuations. They are abrupt reorganizations. They behave like interventions. They act like someone or something stepped in. And they resemble the kind of planetary-scale transformations that a complex, networked, or ecosystem-level intelligence might have attempted during eras in which survival depended on controlling chemical balance rather than building cities. Consider the Neoproterozoic oxygenation events. In several discrete pulses, atmospheric oxygen levels surged far beyond what microbial life at the time should have been capable of producing. These increases occurred too fast for known natural cycles and stabilized in ways that suggest not randomness but regulation. Oxygen rises, holds at a new equilibrium, stays there for millions of years, then rises again in controlled increments. If this were merely a byproduct of microbial bloom, we would expect messy fluctuations. But what we see instead is structured, almost stepped behavior. A pattern. Imagine a planetary network of ancient life forms coordinating oxygen release as part of a metabolic or environmental strategy. Imagine chemical ecosystems acting like lungs, inhaling and exhaling oxygen on geological timescales. If such systems existed and possessed anything resembling intelligence, their signatures would be environmental, not material, consistent with what we observe. Then there are the sudden carbon isotope excursions. These chemical fingerprints show rapid shifts in global carbon cycling that lack any obvious natural trigger. Some of these events look like mass releases of methane. Others resemble abrupt sequestration. In several cases, the timing aligns with environmental reorganizations that appear too synchronized to be accidental. If an ancient intelligence attempted to stabilize climate, manage temperature, or regulate ecosystems, it might manipulate carbon in ways similar to how modern humans influence atmospheric composition, only with different methods, different mechanisms, and vastly different goals. And because the actors would have been dissolved into deep time, all we would see today is a chemical shadow, a sudden change in isotopic ratios frozen in rock. Another puzzle arises with the Snowball Earth episodes, eras when the entire planet froze from pole to pole. Their onset is rapid, and their exit is even faster. These transitions behave less like random natural catastrophes and more like feedback systems collapsing, resetting, and rebalancing. Some researchers propose that the freezing may have been triggered by biological processes that disrupted greenhouse gas cycles. Others suggest massive volcanic events. But the precision of these transitions raises another possibility: environmental systems pushed to the brink by intelligent organisms attempting to regulate their surroundings. If distributed civilizations existed, they may have inadvertently triggered ice ages through large-scale chemical engineering, only to vanish before the planet thawed. We also observe anomalous nutrient cycles, especially in the ancient oceans. In several periods, nutrient availability suddenly becomes uniform across vast regions, a pattern hard to explain through natural currents alone. Uniformity suggests distribution, and distribution suggests management. Some of these signatures resemble the effects of modern ocean fertilization experiments, in which humans attempt to stimulate plankton blooms to capture carbon. But these prehistoric versions occurred long before complex animal life existed. If ancient biological networks synchronized nutrient flow, the result would be precisely these uniform signatures. Their purpose? Possibly stabilizing ecosystems, possibly supporting large-scale biological communication systems, or possibly something beyond our current capacity to imagine. Even more striking are the thermal anomalies locked inside metamorphic rocks. Regions of the crust show evidence of intense heating events that do not match volcanic activity, impact events, or tectonic shear. Instead, these localized zones look like targeted pulses of heat, short-lived, intense, and bounded with unnatural precision. Such signatures could arise from mantle plumes, but many do not align with mantle plume behavior. If ancient life forms manipulated geothermal energy for survival or communication, or if their biological processes generated heat at scales we cannot replicate, these sudden thermal spikes could be remnants of a prehistoric energy economy. An economy not based on combustion or electricity, but on chemical gradients, biological catalysis, or geochemical resonance. Environmental engineering leaves behind patterns, and patterns invite interpretation. But interpretation is difficult because our modern reference point, human civilization, is too young and too specialized. We assume cities, metals, electricity, tools. Perhaps the earliest civilizations lived inside oceans, communicating through vibrations, regulating chemical cycles, engineering ecosystems, rather than constructing machines. Perhaps they existed as vast coral-like networks or as microbial superstructures capable of altering planetary conditions. Perhaps they understood Earth at a level we have not yet reached, treating the planet not as a resource but as a body whose systems they intentionally tuned. If you find yourself fascinated by these possibilities, take a moment now to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Doing so keeps you connected to a growing community of curious minds who feel drawn to the forgotten layers of Earth's past. And it also tells the algorithm that you're part of this long journey into the unknown. helping this investigation reach the people who sense that history may be far older, far deeper, and far stranger than we've been taught. Because as we follow these environmental signatures deeper, we begin to see a pattern of collapse woven through them. Civilization rises, it regulates, it transforms. Then something breaks, and the planet resets. These resets wipe the slate clean, leaving only chemical aftershocks. And these aftershocks guide us into the next chapter, where we must confront the most violent forces in Earth's history, the cataclysms that struck with such intensity that entire worlds vanished, taking with them every trace of the civilizations that may have flourished before the age of dinosaurs, yet leaving behind if environmental anomalies hint at ancient intelligence shaping the world. Then the catastrophic resets that punctuate Earth's history reveal the brutal truth. Even the greatest civilizations, no matter their form, cannot withstand the planet's cycles of destruction. Earth has never been a stable home. It is a world forged in extremes, sculpted by eruptions, drenched in fire, frozen in ice, buried in ash, drowned in oceans, and struck by celestial blows powerful enough to rearrange ecosystems overnight. These catastrophic resets function like a cosmic purge, clearing away entire chapters of biological innovation. And if civilizations existed before the dinosaurs, their destruction would not be merely likely. It would be inevitable. The evidence of their existence would be annihilated so thoroughly that only the faintest echoes would remain in the geological or chemical record. These resets do not whisper. They roar, and their signatures shake the planet from core to crust. Consider the Permian-Triassic extinction, the greatest known catastrophe in Earth's history. Although it occurred after the era we are investigating, it provides a model for how total destruction unfolds. 96% of marine species vanished. 70% of land species disappeared. But more revealing than the scale is the speed. Geological layers show a near-instant collapse of ecosystems. Carbon spikes rise sharply, oxygen levels crash, and temperature swings become violent. These changes happen too fast for slow natural processes. They resemble cascading system failures, exactly the kind of pattern we would expect if a complex global network, natural or intelligent, collapsed and destabilized the world's chemistry. If similar events occurred in the deep past, before the dinosaurs, they might represent not just natural disasters, but the final breath of civilizations no longer capable of maintaining the balance they once helped sustain. Now examine the snowball Earth events. The entire planet freezes solid, wrapped in ice that extends to the equator. Ocean life collapses. Climate cycles halt. Photosynthesis nearly ends. Only a narrow band of extremophiles survive. The transition into these frozen states and the rapid thawing afterward are mysteries to modern science. Their precision suggests a system pushed beyond a threshold, triggered by a sudden shift instead of a gradual slide. Could ancient civilizations, integrated into ecosystems, have influenced greenhouse gases unintentionally? Could their collapse remove stabilizing forces, triggering runaway cooling? Or could they have intentionally altered the environment, attempting to correct an imbalance and instead unleashing global disaster? These are possibilities we cannot dismiss when the chemical and isotopic signatures in these ancient layers behave like the aftermath of planetary-scale interventions gone catastrophically wrong. Then there are the gamma-like extinction signatures. In some Precambrian layers, fossil evidence indicates mass die-offs without any corresponding impact crater, volcanic eruption, or climatic trigger. These silent extinctions show widespread biological destruction with no obvious cause. The layers affected display sudden shifts in isotopic ratios, rapid turnovers in microbial communities, and changes in mineral chemistry that resemble the effects of intense radiation or widespread atmospheric disruption. Some scientists propose massive solar flares or cosmic events, but these explanations struggle to account for the localization and selectivity of the extinction patterns. Could an ancient civilization have triggered an atmospheric collapse, inadvertently or intentionally? Could they have lost control of energy sources unknown to us, causing environmental failure? We cannot prove it, but the patterns remain unsettling. Tectonic destruction adds another layer to this puzzle. Supercontinents form and break apart in cycles, crushing anything caught between colliding landmasses. Entire terrains are subducted into the mantle, melted and reborn as new crust. The breakup of Rodinia and the rise of Gondwana, for example, were violent episodes that reshaped coastlines, oceans, and climates. If civilizations existed during these cycles, their landscapes would vanish completely. Their structures, artifacts, and even their bodies would be ground beneath shifting plates, compressed into metamorphic layers, or consumed by magma. The geological scars left behind from these events are intense: rapid mineral transformations, pressure deformations, and thermal pulses. But hidden inside these scars are anomalies, patterns that feel too clean, too rapid, too synchronized to arise by tectonic processes alone. When the crust tears itself apart, sometimes it reveals inconsistencies that hint at forces missing from our models. Volcanic cataclysms play a similar role. Massive flood basalts, like the ones that formed the Siberian traps, can blanket millions of square kilometers in molten rock. If civilizations existed beneath these regions, every trace of them would be buried beneath thousands of meters of basalt. The geological record would show nothing but uniform lava. And yet, in some ancient lava flows, we find bubbles of unusual gas composition, rapid cooling signatures, or chemical inclusions that do not match magma origins. These could be remnants of environmental collapse, rapid atmospheric changes, or the destruction of complex ecosystems that influenced gas composition. Volcanic layers preserve destruction, but not the details. They hold the silence, but sometimes the silence is structured in ways that imply something once disrupted the atmosphere before the lava sealed the story. Impact events complicate this picture even further. Many ancient craters are long gone, erased by tectonics or erosion. Yet chemical evidence of impacts persists: iridium spikes, shocked quartz, molten spherules. These signatures appear in layers where no crater survives. Some of these impact horizons coincide with biological anomalies or environmental resets. But in certain places we find strange layering patterns, impact-like signals without the expected debris. Could some of these represent not impacts but concentrated bursts of energy from sources we cannot identify? Sources that might have been natural or might have been tied to ancient civilizations experimenting with forces beyond their ability to control. What makes catastrophic resets so compelling is the repeating pattern they reveal. Life advances, complexity rises, ecosystems stabilize, then a collapse wipes the slate clean. This cycle has happened not once, but dozens of times, and each collapse erases nearly all evidence of the life that came before. If civilizations existed, their rise and fall would be woven into these cycles. Their emergence would alter the environment. Their collapse would destabilize it. Their disappearance would be hidden inside chemical distortions. These resets are not endpoints. They are transitions. They open space for new life forms, new experiments in intelligence, new evolutionary detonations. And these detonations guide us into the next question. If civilizations before the dinosaurs rose and fell in these massive cycles, what remains of them after the catastrophes fade? And where might their echoes still be found in the fossil record as traces of behavior, coordination, or unexpected complexity that survived the destruction long enough to leave behind? If catastrophic resets wiped ancient civilizations from the physical world, then the fossil record becomes the last fragile archive, where their echoes might still survive. Not in the form of bones or tools, but in patterns. Patterns of movement, patterns of behavior, patterns of organization so unlikely that they force us to reconsider whether simple organisms were truly simple, or whether their actions reflect invisible layers of intelligence we have yet to understand. The fossil record we possess is not a complete chronicle. It is a series of snapshots, interrupted by devastation and erasure. Yet inside those snapshots are subtle anomalies, traces of complexity appearing long before it should. Traces suggesting that ancient behaviors may have been coordinated, intentional, or at least influenced by forces more structured than random evolutionary drift. If civilizations existed before the dinosaurs, the fossil record would not show monuments or artifacts. It would show footprints of behavior, encoded in sediment and stone. Some of the oldest fossils on Earth are not bodies, but trails, intricate pathways etched into ancient seabeds. These trace fossils, known as ichnofossils, predate complex animal life. They come from organisms with no known nervous systems, no limbs, and no clear sensory organs. Yet many of these trails display geometric precision, straight-line paths that continue for meters without wavering, spirals that maintain perfect spacing, parallel tracks that suggest group coordination, and in several cases, trails intersect without overlapping, as though the creatures deliberately avoided one another's paths. This type of spatial awareness should not exist in organisms without brains, but it does. Some trace fossils even resemble the optimized network patterns created by modern slime molds or ant colonies when searching for resources, patterns that reflect problem-solving behavior, not instinct. Then there is the mystery of the ping-pong burrows. In ancient formations across Canada, Namibia, and China, researchers have discovered burrow systems that alternate between horizontal and vertical movements in rhythmic sequences. This pattern, repeated consistently across continents, implies a behavioral algorithm, something like programmed behavior, executed by organisms that should have been incapable of such complexity. How does an organism with no brain create repeated geometric patterns across multiple regions separated by oceans and millions of years? These burrow networks resemble early attempts at territorial mapping, resource distribution, or communication systems. They behave like the remnants of an ancient logic expressed biologically rather than technologically. Even more perplexing are formations where multiple organisms appear to have moved in coordinated clusters. Some trackways reveal up to a dozen individuals traveling in the same direction, at the same depth, with identical spacing. This resembles herd behavior, yet these organisms predate vertebrates by a vast margin. If coordination occurred, it implies communication or shared intention, something evolutionary biologists struggle to explain in organisms that lacked complex nervous systems. Perhaps they communicated chemically, electromagnetically, or through vibrational signals in sediment. Perhaps they were fragments of a distributed intelligence, the biological components of a larger networked entity. Other fossil anomalies involve sudden bursts of organized behavior without evolutionary context. In certain layers, feeding traces appear with optimized patterns that match modern mathematical models of efficiency. These patterns appear abruptly, then disappear just as suddenly. If this were instinct evolving gradually, we would see intermediate forms, but instead, we see perfect execution followed by absence, as though the behavior emerged fully formed, served a purpose, then vanished when the system that supported it collapsed. Chemical fossils add another dimension to this mystery. Stromatolites, layered structures built by ancient microbial colonies, often grow in predictable patterns. But some stromatolite formations show sudden shifts that resemble regulated engineering rather than natural growth. Perfectly aligned columns, rapid transitions between growth phases, synchronization across kilometers of ocean. These changes occur too quickly to reflect environmental shifts, suggesting internal coordination within the microbial ecosystem. Modern cyanobacteria coordinate through chemical gradients. What if ancient microbial civilizations coordinated at far larger scales, building oxygen factories, stabilizing ecosystems, and communicating through chemical pulses that left behind the layered signatures we now see in stone? We also find fossil evidence of predator-prey interactions that seem too advanced for the time in which they appear. In some layers, prey organisms appear to respond to threats with coordinated movement patterns, creating escape traces that require collective awareness. Yet these organisms had no brains. How did they coordinate? Did they rely on distributed sensory systems? Did they use bioelectrical communication? Modern fish can synchronize movement through lateral line sensing. Birds coordinate through local feedback loops. Ants follow pheromone gradients. But the organisms that left these traces lived before such systems evolved. Unless they evolved systems we do not recognize, systems that vanished before they could fossilize, or systems integrated into forms of intelligence that operated outside the constraints of modern animal anatomy. Even morphological fossils present anomalies. Some early life forms appear with structures that seem too specialized, too advanced, too optimized to represent primitive evolution. Multi-chambered bodies capable of regulating pressure. Filament networks that resemble biological wiring. appendages that appear functional yet lack clear evolutionary ancestry. These fossils suggest an evolutionary leap, a sudden appearance of complexity that defies gradualism. Such leaps might represent the remnants of ancient ecosystems shaped by intelligence, where selection pressures were unusual or guided. Or they may reflect genetic inheritance from organisms lost to deep time. There are also fossil formations that behave like ancient communal structures. Rings, clusters, and patterned colonies that resemble the foundations of social behavior. These formations appear and disappear without leaving descendants. They behave as if entire modes of life emerged briefly, flourished, then died out completely. If these modes of life were part of ancient civilizations, biological or distributed, they might have left behind only the traces of their collective actions. The most tantalizing fossils are the ones that resemble repeated resets within the fossil record itself. In some sequences, we see complexity rise, then vanish. Behavior advance, then collapse. Organisms become more specialized, then retreat to simplicity. These waves mimic the rise and fall of civilizations, not the slow march of evolution. Each wave forms a pattern. Each pattern echoes something intentional. And each echo pulls us closer to the realization that intelligence may not have been a singular event in Earth's history, but a recurring phenomenon, erased again and again by catastrophic resets, leaving behind only the faintest signatures for us to decipher. Signatures that lead us directly into the next question. If intelligence has risen more than once in forms alien to our expectations, what role might the cosmos itself play in shaping these cycles, and whether the ancient observers of passing comets, if they existed, left behind influences that now guide us toward recognizing patterns like the synchronized behavior of R2 SWAN and 3I Atlas as they move through Earth's gravitational corridor. And if the fossil record hints at intelligence emerging, in forms we can barely recognize, then the cosmos itself may hold the key to understanding why these cycles appear, disappear, and re-emerge in ways that mirror the subtle rhythms of celestial bodies. For throughout Earth's deep past, cosmic patterns have played an intimate role in shaping climate, biology, and even the timing of evolutionary detonations. Ancient civilizations, if they existed, would have looked to the sky not for mythology alone, but for survival, comprehension, and perhaps even synchronization with forces larger than themselves. The heavens are not remote or indifferent. They are woven into every chapter of Earth's history, influencing extinctions, migrations, energy cycles, and environmental stability. The possibility that ancient civilizations observed cosmic bodies like R2 SWAN and 3I Atlas or their prehistoric analogs is not as far-fetched as it seems. For long before humans carved myths into stone, the cosmos carved its patterns directly into the planet. Start with orbital cycles. The precession of Earth's axis, the oscillation of its orbit, and the shifting alignment of our planet in relation to solar and galactic energies create periodic environmental changes. These cycles, known as Milankovitch cycles, influence glaciations, sea levels, and atmospheric composition. Modern humans learned to recognize these patterns only recently. But an ancient civilization, biological, distributed, or ecosystem-based, might have sensed these shifts instinctually, integrating them into survival strategies. These cycles would act like a cosmic metronome, setting the tempo for environmental regulation. When comets aligned, when solar activity surged, when Earth crossed regions of increased cosmic radiation, life would adapt. And if intelligence existed, it might have attempted to interpret, predict, or even influence these cycles. Then consider cosmic rays. These high-energy particles bombard Earth intermittently, altering DNA, triggering mutations, and influencing cloud formation. Fluctuations in cosmic ray intensity correspond with evolutionary leaps and mass extinctions. The synchrony is uncanny. In some layers of ancient rock, spikes in isotopes like beryllium-10 reveal periods of intense cosmic radiation. These spikes align with evolutionary explosions, as though cosmic energy played a role in driving complexity. If prehistoric civilizations existed, they may have understood the sky as a source of both knowledge and danger, reading radiation as a signal for environmental change. They may have recognized patterns in comet passes, solar cycles, and galactic alignments long before humans conceptualized astronomy. Comets themselves form another crucial link, Across Earth's history, comets have delivered water, organic molecules, and catastrophic impacts. They arrive not randomly, but in clusters, influenced by gravitational harmonics of the solar system. Some bring destruction, others bring ingredients for life. Their movements shape climate cycles, sea levels, and atmospheric chemistry. For a civilization attuned to environmental signals, comets would be central to understanding planetary cycles. The passing of a comet could mark the beginning of growth, decline, or transformation. And if intelligence existed in eras far older than dinosaurs, it may have developed a symbiotic relationship with these celestial visitors, perceiving them not as random wanderers, but as part of a larger cosmic pattern. This brings us to a more provocative possibility: the idea that cosmic events may have inspired or influenced the emergence of intelligence itself. Some researchers propose that bursts of cosmic radiation act like evolutionary catalysts. They disrupt stable DNA patterns, creating mutations, some of which lead to new forms of complexity. If this is true, then the rise of intelligence on Earth might not be a local accident, but a result of cosmic timing, a cosmic rhythm pulsing through the biosphere, guiding life toward new potentials. A rhythm that civilizations, if they existed, might have sensed, interpreted, and encoded into their understanding of time. This perspective casts comets like R2-SWAN and 3I Atlas in a new light. Their synchronized behavior might not be coincidence, but part of a repeating pattern that ancient observers once recognized. Throughout ancient strata, we also find isotopic anomalies linked to supernova events. Stars exploding across the galaxy shower Earth with energy, triggering atmospheric changes, temperature shifts, and even extinctions. These cosmic detonations leave behind chemical signatures in deep-sea sediments and ancient rocks. And in some cases, the biological response to these events is strangely coordinated. Entire lineages shift or collapse simultaneously, as though responding to a cosmic alarm. If ancient intelligence existed, it might have recognized these patterns as part of a larger cosmic cycle, one in which life rises and falls in harmony with stellar rhythms. Planetary resonance provides another clue. The gravitational pull between celestial bodies creates cyclical tensions in Earth's crust, influencing volcanic activity, tectonic movements, and magnetic field cycles. These resonances act like musical chords played across geological timescales. Some ancient climate shifts correspond with these harmonics. If prehistoric intelligence existed, it might have perceived these patterns as environmental cues. It might have built its survival strategies around cosmic resonance, integrating planetary rhythms into ecological engineering. But perhaps the most mysterious cosmic influence comes from the so-called galactic tide. As the solar system moves through the Milky Way, it encounters regions of differing density, radiation levels, and gravitational forces. These transitions occur over tens of millions of years and align with patterns of extinction and renewal. Over and over, life is shaken, collapsed, reborn. If intelligence emerged more than once, each emergence may have been guided or disrupted by these galactic cycles. Civilizations may have risen when cosmic conditions were stable, only to be swept away when the solar system crossed into unstable regions. Imagine ancient observers, whether microbial networks, oceanic collectives, or distributed fungal intelligences, sensing the sky not as something distant, but as part of their own identity. Imagine them responding to cosmic rhythms, integrating celestial cycles into their existence. The movements of comets might have been warnings. The pulse of solar activity might have been communication. The shifts in cosmic radiation might have been catalysts for transformation. And as we witness the synchronized behavior of R2-SWAN and 3I Atlas today, drifting through Earth's gravitational corridor like twin messengers, we may be seeing a reflection of patterns that ancient civilizations once recognized, patterns whose deeper meaning pulls us into the next question. If cosmic cycles influenced ancient intelligence, how might those influences survive today in myth, memory, or the subconscious architecture of human thought, leading us toward, if cosmic cycles shaped ancient intelligence, then the traces of those cycles, forgotten by the planet, erased by deep time, consumed by geological upheaval, may still live somewhere else, in memory, myth, and the symbolic architecture of human consciousness. Long before writing, long before agriculture, long before humans shaped their own civilizations, the mind was already carrying stories older than human thought itself. Stories of floods, fires, sky serpents, pillars of light, beings descending from the heavens, and worlds destroyed and rebuilt. These myths appear independently across cultures, separated by oceans, continents, and millennia. Their synchronicity is astonishing. Their themes are cyclical. Their symbolism often aligns with cosmic events, extinction patterns, and geological phenomena that occurred long before the societies telling these myths existed. It is as though humanity inherited not only genes, but echoes, deep, ancient echoes of civilizations erased long before humans walked the earth. Consider the global flood myth, one of the most universal stories in human tradition. Nearly every ancient culture includes a deluge narrative. Sumerian, Babylonian, Hebrew, Greek, Norse, Hindu, Chinese, Native American, Polynesian, African. These stories do not describe simple storms. They describe world resets. They describe waters rising, continents shifting, civilizations drowning, knowledge being lost, and creation beginning anew. They mirror the catastrophic resets seen in geological records, including prehistoric flooding events that reshaped coastlines and submerged entire land masses. Why would humans, separated by tens of thousands of years and thousands of kilometers, tell the same story? One explanation is convergent experience. Another is psychological archetype. But a third possibility is inheritance. Echoes from eras before humanity, encoded into the deep structures of consciousness through evolutionary pathways we do not fully understand. If ancient civilizations existed in pre-dinosaur eras, their collapse during catastrophic environmental changes could have left imprints so powerful that later intelligent species, including humans, absorbed them subconsciously as mythic memory. Creation myths provide similar clues. Many describe the world beginning not once but repeatedly. Cycles of creation and destruction, ages rising and falling, civilizations forming and vanishing. The Hindu concept of yugas, the Mayan cycles of suns, the Greek ages of man, the Egyptian Zeptepi, the first time, often described not as the literal beginning of the world, but as the beginning of a forgotten age that preceded the known one. The Dogon people describe cosmic order influenced by celestial bodies long before modern astronomy existed. Aboriginal Australians tell Dreamtime stories that encode geological events tens of thousands of years old. These myths behave less like fantasies and more like encrypted memories passed through generations, representing events no human could have witnessed yet somehow preserved. Then there are myths of beings not quite physical, entities of light, shadow, water, stone, forms that mirror the non-anthropocentric intelligence discussed earlier. Many early cultures describe intelligent beings without fixed bodies, spirits of the sea, conscious winds, living mountains, creatures made of light or vibration. These descriptions may reflect psychological projection, but they might also echo ancient forms of intelligence that were real, yet fundamentally different from modern animals. If prehistoric civilizations were distributed, oceanic, fungal, or chemical in nature, ancient humans encountering remnants of their presence might have interpreted them symbolically, encoding them into myths as gods, spirits, or elemental beings. Cosmic myths deepen the mystery further. Cultures worldwide depict serpents or dragons descending from the sky, beings associated with comets, meteors, or celestial cycles. The feathered serpent of Mesoamerica, the rainbow serpent of Australia, the Chinese dragon, the Norse Jörmungandr, serpents tied to creation, destruction, knowledge, and cosmic order. Their description often mirrors the luminous tales of comets. Ancient civilizations may have observed comet passages as omens, cycles, or returning signals. If earlier intelligences also perceived comets as environmental triggers, their interpretations might have been transmitted through evolutionary pathways, ultimately becoming mythic archetypes. The synchronized behavior of R2 SWAN and 3I Atlas today might feel eerily familiar, because similar patterns influenced ancient minds long before humanity existed, leaving behind symbolic residues in the form of serpents in the sky. Even dreams may hold clues. Jung proposed that archetypes emerge from a collective unconscious shared by all humans. But what if the collective unconscious is deeper than humanity? What if it carries impressions from evolutionary ancestors that existed in entirely different forms? If ancient intelligence shaped environments, collapsed catastrophically, or synchronized with cosmic cycles, the memory of these events might survive in biological pathways linked to fear, awe, pattern recognition, and instinct. Humans dreaming of floods, firestorms, cosmic serpents, and cycles of creation and destruction may be experiencing echoes of events experienced by earlier life forms that survived through genetic lineage. Trauma can imprint on biology. Stress responses pass down generations. Why not memories of planetary upheavals? Symbols in early human art support this possibility. Cave paintings across Eurasia show identical geometric symbols: dots, spirals, ladders, waves, repeated over tens of thousands of years. Some of these symbols resemble patterns formed by magnetic fields, chemical gradients, or ancient microbial structures. Some match comet trajectories, meteor showers, or astronomical cycles. It is possible humans encoded these patterns instinctively, not because they understood the science, but because their minds recognized something ancient and familiar, a symbolic language inherited from earlier cycles of intelligence, or from environmental signatures left behind by civilizations erased long before our lineage began. Even language itself may contain echoes. Proto-languages include root concepts of cycles, fire, sky serpents, earth mothers, and great floods that correspond uncannily with cosmic and geological patterns. Why would languages emerging independently encode the same foundational symbols? This suggests that the mind is shaped by forces predating culture, perhaps even predating humanity. If intelligence emerged multiple times on Earth, rising and falling across epochs, some deep structures of meaning may have survived as fragments that later cultures interpreted as myth. Myth is not merely fiction. Myth is memory distorted by evolution, translated through culture, and expressed through symbol. When we examine myths through the lens of prehistoric cycles, geological anomalies, and cosmic resonance, they begin to look like messages, scrambled, ancient, and incomplete, but messages nonetheless. They whisper of worlds before ours, civilizations lost to deep time, intelligences that shaped the planet in ways we still detect as anomalous patterns in rock, fossil, and sky. And when we consider the synchronized behavior of modern comets like R2 SWAN and 3I Atlas, we cannot help but wonder whether these celestial alignments, too, were once part of a symbolic or environmental language understood by beings whose stories now survive only in fragmented myth. These fragments lead us to the final question, one that brings the investigation inward. If myth holds echoes of forgotten civilizations, could consciousness itself be the last remaining archive, carrying within it the remnants of ancient epochs, ancestral fears, cosmic patterns, and forgotten intelligences waiting to be rediscovered as we turn toward the idea that consciousness may be? Finally, if myth carries echoes of ancient civilizations and cosmic cycles, then consciousness itself may be the last surviving archive of epochs erased by deep time. Consciousness is often reduced to neurons and electrochemical impulses, yet it behaves like something far older, far deeper, far more mysterious than physical matter alone. It is a field of memory, intuition, instinct, symbol, and perception. It is a mirror in which glimpses of prehistoric worlds may still flicker. When we dream, when we feel déjà vu, when we experience inexplicable fears or resonances with landscapes we have never seen, the mind may be touching layers of experience inherited across evolutionary cycles. Not personal memory, not cultural memory, but planetary memory. An imprint formed by countless rises and collapses of intelligence long before the dinosaurs and preserved not in rock, but in the silent architecture of living systems. Consider intuition. Humans often describe sudden insight as if it came from outside themselves. Ideas appear fully formed, as though retrieved from a source beyond conscious thought. Neuroscience explains this as subconscious processing, but what if subconscious processing extends deeper than individual experience? What if intuition taps into ancient cognitive structures built over millions of years, shaped by survival, collapse, catastrophe, and renewal? If earlier civilizations developed forms of intelligence embedded in biology, Their strategies, patterns, and responses may have become encoded into the fabric of life itself, expressing in modern consciousness as archetypes, instincts, or symbolic premonitions. Consciousness might be a fossil, not a fossil of matter, but a fossil of experience. Dreams present another doorway into this ancient archive. Across cultures, across continents, across history, humans dream of floodwaters, collapsing skies, firestorms, cosmic serpents, and endless cycles of destruction and rebirth. These dream motifs do not arise from personal trauma alone. They appear universally, even in children too young to know the myths. Perhaps dreams are where consciousness replays the oldest programs encoded in biology, programs formed when ancient intelligences confronted cosmic cycles, geological upheaval, and catastrophic resets. A dream of drowning may not represent mere psychological fear, but the ghost of a flood that ended an entire civilization hundreds of millions of years before humans existed. A dream of falling fire may echo ancient cosmic events witnessed by organisms long vanished. If intelligence evolved and collapsed multiple times, its emotional imprint may have survived in the subconscious architecture of life. Memory itself may be deeper than biology. Recent studies suggest that fatally stressed organisms can encode informational changes into their DNA and pass those changes down through generations. Stress leaves a chemical signature. Experience leaves a pattern. Environmental trauma can imprint on genetic pathways, altering behavior, instinct, and even perception. If catastrophic events shaped ancient civilizations before the dinosaurs, the trauma of their collapse could have echoed through evolutionary pathways, influencing fear responses in later species, shaping instincts that persist even now. The human tendency to fear darkness, storms, deep water, heights, and sudden silence may reflect ancient dangers faced by organisms in prehistoric worlds, dangers so intense they became part of the evolutionary blueprint. But consciousness may reach even further back. Quantum theories of mind propose that information might be linked to the structure of space-time itself. If true, consciousness could act as a receiver, tapping into patterns older than biology, older than Earth, older than matter. Prehistoric civilizations, biological, networked, or environmental, might have left informational traces in the quantum substrate of the planet. These traces would not decay like fossils. They would not erode like ruins. They would persist as patterns in the probabilistic matrix underlying reality. Modern consciousness might detect these patterns instinctually, interpreting them as intuition, myth, creativity, or spiritual experience. In this sense, consciousness becomes the final archive because it is the only medium subtle enough to preserve experiences erased physically but retained informationally. Human creativity provides clues as well. The sudden invention of symbolic language, art, mathematics, and cosmology in early human societies appears abrupt, as though triggered. Ancient humans painted the same symbols across thousands of kilometers. They built megaliths aligned with cosmic cycles they should not have been able to track without advanced tools. They described beings of light, serpents of the sky, cyclical ages, and cosmic destruction with uncanny accuracy. These patterns resemble faint recollections of experiences older than humanity, resurfacing in symbolic form. If ancient civilizations before the dinosaurs existed, their understanding of cosmic patterns may have seeped into later species through biological inheritance, environmental imprinting, or quantum memory. Human consciousness, newly awakened, may have interpreted these ancient impressions as revelations, myths, or divine encounters. Philosophically, this idea is profound. It means intelligence on Earth may not be linear. It may be cyclical. It may rise, collapse, rise again, each time leaving behind fragments stored not in stone, but in consciousness. It means we are not the beginning of the story. We are the continuation. And our fascination with the unknown, our irresistible pull toward ancient mysteries, cosmic patterns, and the deep past, may be an instinct passed down from intelligences long vanished. When humans stare at comets like R2 SWAN and 3I Atlas drifting through Earth's gravitational corridor, sensing patterns and meaning in their synchronized behavior, perhaps we are remembering something. Something we never lived, something inherited, something older than the human species, older than the dinosaurs, older than the continents themselves. If consciousness is the final archive, then exploring these mysteries is not simply intellectual curiosity, it is self-discovery. It is an attempt to understand why we feel drawn to lost worlds, forgotten epochs, and cosmic rhythms that should have no emotional weight yet stir something deep within us. And as we contemplate this possibility, a quiet question emerges. What if the next step in uncovering Earth's forgotten civilizations is not under the ground, not in the sky, but inside the mind itself, waiting for us to remember what ancient intelligence tried to preserve before deep time erased every physical trace and now invites us to rediscover those echoes by... Before we continue, share this video with someone who feels drawn to the mysteries of our ancient past, and subscribe so you can stay connected to every new chapter in this unfolding search for what may have existed before any world we recognize.